Hello everybody, Jeremy is here again to continue his exciting series of the countdown of the top 20 seasons of Power Rangers in all of history, all the greatness that we've seen over the years, and I am getting down to the nitty and the gritty here. We are down to 6 seasons, yes, our own Power Rangers team of seasons, just 6 left. So I want to again preface this before I get into the first number on the countdown, that we're at the point where every season left is good. They're varying degrees of good. Some I like a little more than others. Some I have to kind of find nitpicky reasons to say, oh, this one's slightly better than the other. You know, but they're all just really, really good seasons. These are seasons that I would recommend to pretty much anybody. These 6 for sure. These are just solid top to bottom. And just remember, you know, that my ranking, honestly, in my mind, I think like a lot of people, it can change over time, you know, like 1 might become 2, 2 might become 3, 3 might become 1, stuff like that, you know, where there's a little bit of wiggle room. I think these 2 seasons I'm going to go through today are pretty hard and fast in the 6 and the 5 spot, although they could even flip-flop on their own. But again, lots of great seasons. You know probably a lot of what's coming right now, but let's just get into it with number 6 in our countdown. I had to think about this long and hard, 6 and 5, but 6 is Power Rangers in Space! Yes, in space. I know in space is a lot of people's favorite season, or right up there. It's big for me too. It's not quite as big. You know I love it, I love it like everybody does, but it does have its flaws. I think for me, the biggest flaw with Power Rangers in Space is that it gets a little too focused on Andros. And In Space is kind of really the start of the whole idea of there's like a plot line for the Red Ranger, and his plot line's kind of dominating, and it dominates throughout most of the season, which is fine. It's not a bad plot line. The whole Andros, Astronema / Corone thing, it's a fine storyline, but I think a lot of the other Rangers are sacrificed for that storyline. I think they miss some of their own potential individual focus because the whole Andros story dominates. And yes, let's be real, even when you were a kid, for me, Power Rangers in Space, what was that, like 1998, I believe? No, 96. Well, no, hold on. Time Force was 01, so 2000, yeah, 98. 98 was in space. And for me, I would have been about 14 when that came on. So, smart enough to know better, probably at the age really where it's like, why are you still watching Power Rangers? But yes, everybody knew Astronema was Andros' sister pretty much the second it became a plot line. It wasn't a big reveal, and it was fine that he was looking for it. I mean, let's be honest, him looking for his sister at least had more logic behind it than the Lost Galaxy Rangers looking for the lights of Orion, to be completely fair. And I thought it was just an amazing twist when, he finds Astronema. It's like, oh, we have this great feel-good moment. No, she's going to be evil again, and it's more of a forced issue. And I thought that was a great little twist to make the series longer. However, that wasn't always the case. Take, for example, say the Psycho Rangers, which, again, don't get me wrong, fun characters, great voices, great bit of threat that it gave the Rangers, even if it really was pretty much just repeating the Mega Ranger plot, which, another thing, tangent here. Mega Ranger, I like you. I really do. You're a fun series. But you're overrated because people think you are just the most fantastic series ever. Like Mega Ranger and the Psycho Rangers, like all that whole storyline, it's a fine storyline. It's very, very solid. It ain't that great. It's not like the greatest be-all to end-all. It's good. Very good. Not like the greatest thing ever, though. And also, Psycho Black, why is your neck thing different color? Why is it different? You know that bugs me. It always bugs me. I'm OCD on that. It bugs me. But anyway, the Psycho Ranger plotline was one of those where it's like, okay, so all we're doing is Astronema is she's forced to be evil, but now she wants to take over on her own. Didn't really explain that. And now it's just a whole long series back and forth of Dark Spectre be like, my power's going away. I'll figure it out. My power's going away. I'll figure it out. My power's going away. I said I was going to figure it out. It drags a bit at that point in time. And take Dark Spectre himself. Again, great costume, cool, great big bad, although it was a bit undercut by just reusing the Malagor suit from the Turbo movie. Even though they did make a nice joke about it, I appreciate that. But the whole fact that Dark Spectre went down just like a bitch. He did. He really did. Like, yeah, cool. You defeated Darkonda, which again, well, just like how In Space started the trend of the whole Red Ranger with some big dramatic thing, plotline carrying out, usually family related throughout the season. It also started the whole trend of, oh, we've got a villain, like one of the main villains that's like, ooh, trying to undercut. Well, I mean, there was a little bit, with Prince Casket, but really it was mostly, Darkonda was the start of the whole concept of, here's a bad guy that is part of the main group of bad guys, but he's trying to take over on his own. Which, I mean, maybe that's why In Space loses some luster over the years, because a lot of the things that it did start like that kind of ended up just becoming bland and predictable over the years and just reused over and over again. Heck, even the Battleizer seemed cool during In Space when it was like the first time ever, and it was like, oh, you did it by accident, and it was crazy, and it's a really cool power, and you used it only a couple times, so it was a novelty. And then every year, Battleizer, and it just became very fatigued. So retroactively, In Space does get a little less love on that level. Now, other great things about In Space, because I'm giving you the negative first because it's easy. It's easier to just come with a few little bad things, but there's a lot to gush about. And just, I mean, again, I don't know about you, but first, when you have that amazing finale in Turbo, where the command center power chamber is destroyed, the Rangers have to go to space. Hey, Justin's gone. That's a good thing. See you, Justin. But the idea of them blasting into space and says to be continued, Power Rangers in space. It's like, oh my gosh, it was just such a thrilling concept, because it's like we're finally just leaving the safety, the comfort zone of the Power Rangers just operate out of Angel Grove, and they're going to school and all that blah 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 nonsense. Like we're expanding beyond that. We're showing that there's a bigger world out there. And from the Millennium message in Turbo, again, we're just the whole show is just building upon itself and saying there's a bigger threat out there. And you have the season start with like all the villains from the other seasons are just together now, and it's like, wow, like it really feels like this whole universe is existing now. Like they don't just operate outside of their own little bubble. Like it was just a fantastic concept. And I mean, I was bummed that TJ got bumped down to Blue Ranger, because the same thing happened to Rocky, and it's like, oh, it's happening again, and with your first black leader, he gets bumped down. It sucks a little bit. At least they didn't make him the Black Ranger again. At least they didn't do that. But it was a little bit disappointing. Although, I love the idea of the spaceship. I'm not the type of person who is big into sci-fi. If you know me at all, you know that, like, Star Wars, Star Trek, all that sort of stuff, it's not really for me. I can appreciate it from afar, but I'm not going to get invested in it. But there was something about the whole idea of the Power Rangers where it's like, wow, you have this ship, and it felt like a full ship, Like, we didn't see all of it, but we saw enough, We saw a main command deck, we saw, where the control room, we saw where they ate, where they trained, like, overall, like, and a couple hallways where it's like, okay, I get the sense that this really is a full ship that they live on. And it was also cool that early on they would go back to Earth for class. Now that kind of disappeared as the series carried on. Just like how early on they kind of had a deal where the very end of the episode would actually be the very beginning of the next episode. Where they wouldn't necessarily repeat the same scene, but they'd kind of like say, okay, this is the next thing for next week. And I really enjoyed that. That they did a nice job of blending the whole thing of, we have to go out in the universe, we have to do our thing, but we still are going to be grounded in our Angel Grove world, It was a nice transition for later seasons where it was like, that whole Angel Grove was just in the past. We're going to new cities with new teams, And of course Lost Galaxy, which had a much grander scope, at least it tried to. So I think In Space did just a fantastic job of settings. I think that was its big thing. I was a little disappointed with the way they handled Bulk and Skull. Like, I get it. Eventually these characters need to be phased out of the show. As realistically, you can't have them, oh, now we're in Mariner Bay. Oh, now we're gonna show up in, in Silver Hills. Like, they couldn't have done that. It wouldn't have been a thing that would have made sense, especially now when it's like, okay, we're getting to the point where the teams are becoming new teams every season. stop having the carryover characters. I love Bulk and Skull. They're my favorite characters. And Professor Phenomenus was a nice addition, without Lieutenant Stone around anymore. But they just became less and less involved. And just their appearances were so sporadic that, let's be real. The one moment that everybody talks about, Countdown to Destruction. I'll touch on that first. It was an amazing moment to see the Rangers reveal their identities to the world, and for Bulk and Skull to be like, oh my gosh, we've known them all along. But again, the biggest problem is that by the time we get to that moment in Countdown to Destruction, none of the Rangers that Bulk and Skull spent a long time with are Rangers anymore. They didn't have any cameos from any of the old teams. First of all, 5 Rangers revealed them. Zane, they probably never even met. And the other 4, they knew briefly in Turbo they had interactions, just a few there. Like, TJ had a good episode with them, but by and large, Bulk and Skull didn't interact much with Cassie, Ashley, Carlos, and TJ. Like, they just didn't. So the moment was it just felt weaker. Now, don't get me wrong, Countdown to Destruction is a great finale. Well, it's a very good finale. It could have been a lot better. There are a lot of things that were, just generic, oh, here's the Ninja Rangers, and here's, Alien Rangers, and here's the Gold Ranger. And, it was just, they were all there, but I don't feel like they gave them any individuality, and that was the biggest problem. And again, they never even gave us an answer to, even though we already knew, to the whole Dimitri Divatox thing. Let's be honest, everybody knew they were twin sisters. But they never really gave it to us fully, in the sense it was just more like, oh, here's her transforming. It's just, I know, I'm just going everywhere here in space, but there's a lot to cover. I think that's one of the big things within space is, while it was the season that kind of brought the first 5 seasons to a close, there was so much stuff we wanted to know, we wanted to see, that just never happened. Like, we never really had the Phantom Ranger explained to us, even though he had an episode in there. We never got any, no cameos from the past Rangers. The destruction of Zordon, again, same sort of deal with the Ranger reveal. Like, it was a great moment, but it was done by Andros. Now, we're told that Andros knew Zordon for a while. He's been the Red Space Ranger for a long time. Not Astro Ranger. Space Ranger for a long time, but we've never seen that. So having him be the one to do it, again, there's no weight behind it. It's not somebody that Zordon, we've seen him have a lot of interaction with. And that's the biggest problem when you have the whole cast change over the years, is if you're going to do something in a grand scheme, we learned this with the Legendary War, you have to A, bring back the cast, and B, give them actual moments. Not just have them on screen. Give them moments. On a side tangent, I think that's one of the things people love about Captain America Civil War. Like, it had a large cast, but, everybody had a moment. So, it didn't feel like it was just a bloated thing. It felt like it was, everybody earned what they got, and nobody felt pushed to the background. And that's kind of what Power Rangers should have done with Countdown to Destruction. Other things about In Space. I don't honestly hate the Ninja Turtle team-up. I don't. Next Mutation is garbage. Straight hot garbage. But it was a fun team-up. It was harmless. It was just a silly bit of fun that told a very clear story over one episode. Again, they didn't bloat it up or anything. So I don't understand why there's so much hatred for it. It is just a fun little piece of business. The Justin team up again. It's fine. I wasn't a big fan of Justin, but he came back. He had his moment. They made a joke about TJ being the Blue Ranger now. It was fine. I don't love the episode. I don't think it's a great episode, but I think it's a fine episode. I think it gives us some nice closure to Justin's storyline, since the Rangers did leave him on Earth. So, there's no reason to hate that. On the flip side, you have the Adam Carlos team-up, which, I'm sorry, Roger Velasco, Carlos sucks. Carlos is crap. Carlos is just boring. he almost, by the way, for anybody who doesn't know out there, Carlos was almost the Red Ranger. Like, if you watch his episodes before they become Rangers, they always have him in a red shirt. They even try to have a Carlos Ashley relationship, which would have been very, very strange. For those who don't know, behind the scenes stuff, from what I gather, is that first they were just going to get rid of Tommy and Catherine, which meant that, and since we saw Carlos and Ashley, Carlos was going to be the Red Ranger, Ashley was going to be the Pink Ranger, Adam and Tanya and Justin were still going to be around. That was the original thinking. Then they changed their mind and said, you know what, let's just scrap the entire cast besides Justin because he's brand new, and, just bring in new actors. And that's when they shifted and put the Cassie and TJ in those roles, which I think was the correct choice. But just imagine that. And then Carlos is just so boring. He has all of his focus, it seems like, tends to be about just a lack of trust in himself. And, I mean, I don't know, that's the problem, is Adam was such a beloved character, right? And then when you bring him in for an episode where all it is Carlos doubting himself, Carlos making mistakes, Adam just straight up being a badass, using the broken morpher, which, again, over time, who knows? They would never had explained with the broken morpher why his was broken, but yet, Jason, because of the power transfer, could use his, and for who cares? Nobody cares. Nobody should care. But you basically give us an episode where you show Carlos as a sad sack. You show Adam be amazing. Carlos being like, I just won't be a Ranger. You take it, Adam. You be a Ranger. All I can think of is well, yeah. Go, Carlos. Deuces. Adam, take over. Be the Black Space Ranger. Nobody's stopping you. Do it. So I think that episode was a big miss because, you have to give me a reason to believe in the new guy other than the old guy who's already cool just telling him to believe in himself, basically. Big miss. Carlos, that episode did you zero favors. All it did was make us love the JYB, and we love the JYB. Anyway, what else about Space? I think Space had some very good villains. Everybody laughs at Melody Perkins with that was impressive. Everybody laughs at that, and then fair enough, laugh at that. But beyond that, she got better. She found a way to strike a nice balance between the over-the-top female villain and, actually emoting as a good actress. She is a good actress, and she was a great original villain. She provided a strong threat to the Rangers consistently, and you always remember that there were other bigger threats in the background as well. And even when she became the cyborg astronomer, she still did her job fantastic. With the pale makeup, it worked really well for her. She emoted very well with it. It was just a fantastic character. Again, Dark Honda, he's basically like Goldar, but he has a paternal instinct to him, so you actually feel bad for him. I was actually surprised at the end, when you have the Z-Wave coming, and you turn Rita and Zed into normal humans and Divatox into normal humans, but you destroy the Machine Empire because they're just machines. I was actually expecting Ecliptor to turn into a real person because he had shown a lot of empathy, and I'm still kind of bummed about that. I would have loved to see Ecliptor transformed into a real guy. I think he deserved it. And by the way, Rita probably should have shown some remorse for the fact that her brother probably was killed. I don't think we saw Rito. Maybe we did, I can't remember. But, you would assume he'd die. Unless you're one of those millions of people who are still waiting for Scorpina to come back and take over in your fanfic. But yeah, so that part disappoints me. But I think overall, In Space is a very, very tight season. From beginning to end, it's giving you a little piece all the time. There is a end game, and that end game is Zordon, saving Zordon. It's really nice to start a season with an actual tangible goal to the end, besides simply defeat the bad guys. Here's some bad guys, we're gonna have to defeat them. Somehow it'll eventually happen, new bad guys will rise up, blah blah blah, we'll defeat them at the end. When you actually have an end point, and you have multiple moments within the series where you almost get to that point, or you gain more information to get to that point, it feels very satisfying. Even if it's not the end you want, the fact that you got an end where there was resolution to your original goal, even if it wasn't the same resolution you wanted, it ends up making it feel like the whole journey was worth it. And also, by the way, before I forget, like the mid-season finale, I missed the mid-season finales, you know, man. Like when the Astro Delta megaship is all sliding on the ground, like getting taken out, like that was crazy, right? That was amazing. Sorry, tangent. But yes, In Space overall, I'm a big fan of it because I feel like it's the first season in Power Rangers history where there is a very clear beginning, middle, and end. Like you know this, you know how the season starts. You have the big twist in the middle. You have the satisfying conclusion. You add to the fact that you wrapped up the first 5 seasons before this. Like you gave some closure to it. Like In Space did a lot right. You know, like it has some of the best characters ever. And TJ, Cassie are still 2 of my all-time favorite Rangers. Ashley's okay. Carlos I don't like, but I mean I like Zane too. Andros, I do really like the Andros character. I don't love him like a lot of people do, but I really do enjoy his character. And I dug the uniforms, you know, like, you know, we eventually down the line got to the point where the whole uniform, like civilian clothes got a little tedious, but it was cool, you know, to have that sort of little space gear. And they could go to their regular clothes when they were on Earth. And again, also, like, whoever it was behind the scenes that said, you know what, let's come up with costumes that really remind everybody that Tracy Lynn Cruz and Patricia Jolie have just massive boobs. Whoever did that, I thank you. I thank you. I thank you, sir. Probably, sir. I thank you. And hey, we even, you know, Corone got to get the purple. Yeah. Anyway, but yes. So, In Space, number 6, well-deserved. Number 5, boom. Oh, that probably would work better with In Space, right? Whatever. Number 5 is the last, right? The last of our trilogy, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Season 3. Yes, the 3rd season was the best season of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. I promise you. And yes, that includes Alien Rangers, because I know Shout Factory will want to release that kind of on its own, you know, those 10 episodes, which I understand they're thinking. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I get why they did. And hey, we got that great theme song of Go, Go, Alien Rangers. Just smooth. Just smooth like butter. Smooth. Season 3 is my favorite season of MMPR simply because, oh my gosh, there's plot. Things actually happen to characters that matter in the long term. Holy crap, you're not just doing like one-off episodes. Oh my god, it blew my mind, right? And also, that was the first time that we actually got to see like the Zords get destroyed and Tommy beginning to earn his reputation of Zord Destroyer guy. But yes, guy who wants to just blow up Zords. But like, right from the beginning, you know, Rito shows up, and yes, Rito becomes a more comedic character. But from the very beginning, like, he is branded as a threat. He destroys the Thunder Megazords, and the Rangers have to go on a quest. You know? Like, it's just refreshing because, you know, we came off the movie, which the movie was... It was fine, you know? It wasn't great. And it also led to a lot of bad Season 2, like, multi-parters, which I've talked about in the past video. But it led to it just led to a really cool 4-part, you know, where it's like, okay, we actually have to go and earn these other powers. Zordon's not just going to give us Zords like he did at the beginning of Season 2. Like, this is what we know what our end goal is, but we have to actually go out there and earn it. And it just felt very satisfying because all along the way, you're raising the threat, you know? You're bringing in new foot soldiers. You're bringing in new villains. You're just raising the bar, you know, little by little, and it's actually making it feel like Season 3 is necessary. One of the problems in more recent seasons, like when they split stuff up with like Samurai and Super Samurai and Megaforce and Super Megaforce, is they don't necessarily always raise the bar, specifically Samurai and Super Samurai, where it's like nothing really changed besides the name. Like here, and even in Season 2, like Zed came and it was a big threat, but like after that initial, you know, multi-parter, like, things just kind of went back to normal. In Season 3, like, it doesn't just play out like that. It's yes, the Rangers get new powers, and yes, they defeat the current monster, but more stuff happens along the way. Like, Master Vile shows up, Ninjor is captured, Catherine shows up, and really messes with Kimberly. Like, it's a constant plot, like, of just little needling here and there, where it actually feels like the villains are earning victories. Like, I believe that's when Lord Zed actually shows up in the command center. That wasn't season 2, was it? It was season 3? Yeah. He actually shows up in the command center. Like, it is just shocking. You know, it became a thing in later seasons where it would, in the finale, it would always be like, oh, the villains broke into the Rangers' base and destroyed everything, and blah, blah, blah. It became old hat. But, like, then, it was intense. They had to call Rangers from another world, i.e., we can finally use some more Kaku Ranger footage. But, like, it was just a constant, like, one-upsmanship back and forth, which made it feel like it was just a much more full season, a full experience, I guess you would say. And the Ninjetti fights, I mean, they were fun. You know, you found a way to take the original fights and just add a new layer of flash to them. Now, I wasn't 100% a fan of them because I do think there is a lot to be said for actually seeing the actors, you know, fighting the putties. You know, it's a more visceral feel. And when you just have them like in their big cloth ninja costumes, and then you have big feathery tangas, it kind of loses some of the punch. But it still is fun to actually see them use the ninja powers, you know, grow big. And honestly, part of the time I was like, it kind of feels like the Ninjetti powers are stronger than actually morphing. Like, you can do some really wacky stuff with them, you know? Maybe, I don't know, maybe they should have rethought that. I think the Kimberly Catherine arc was handled fantastically. It was a great thing because when the first, you know, when Jason, Zach, and Trini disappeared, it was, you know, there was a dispute, and they left very hastily, and it showed in the footage. Here, Amy Jo Johnson was like, you know what, I'm ready to leave. Just telling you in advance, from what I've heard from her. And so they're like, okay, let's work on this. Let's write you out. It wasn't just a quick, you know, rip the Band-Aid off. It was, we are going to come up with a storyline. We're going to have to revisit it a couple times, and it will eventually lead to you disappearing from the series. So when Kimberly left, I think it had more of an emotional impact. Yes, obviously Catherine was going to take over. Hey, look, we got another evil person that became a Ranger. But it was a much more earned moment, you know, that happened over time. And, you know, dumb pink energy stuff, like too much pink energy, we know, we all know that stuff. But overall, it was just a good, solid story. And having recently rewatched Kaku Ranger, maybe I should do a video talking about Kaku Ranger. But having recently rewatched Kaku Ranger, it's also very interesting to see how they use the footage. For those who don't know, quick sidebar, you know how we have the Ninja Megazord and then the Shogun Megazord and Kaku Ranger? The Shogun Megazord is actually the main Megazord, and they have to later on earn the Ninja Megazord. So it's kind of it's backwards, but it was very interesting to see how they use the footage because, again, Ninja is a character that in the Japanese version doesn't show up until very late in the series. Here, he's there from the very beginning. They work in the kidnapping storyline. They work in, you know, it's just very beautiful how they use the footage. Like, I think that's one of the expert things that we don't see anymore in Power Rangers, or at least not as much. Because, I mean, we do see it in seasons like a Dino Charge on RPM, but it's just amazing how they would take the entire season of Sentai and they would pick and choose and say, okay, this is what we want right now. And we are going to take this from that, and we will just Frankenstein this over there and use this later. And, you know, with the monster fights, and okay, now the Alien Rangers show up, and it was just a very interesting experience. Also, I think season 3 had a lot of good standalone episodes, some fun standalone episodes, like Rita's PETA. Everybody loves that episode. But it was one of the better episodes that like JDF actually got to kind of be funny. You know, like I appreciate stuff like that. Was season 3 also Don't Vote for Dummy? Or was that season 2? I always get those mixed up sometimes. If it was, then add that to the list, because fantastic. Utterly fantastic. But yeah, so, by the way, before I even forget, Bulk and Skull. Like, I gotta get back to Bulk and Skull, because they are on such a story, you know, such a story arc throughout the entire series of Power Rangers that they're around. to go from bullies in season 1, who are just, ostensibly misguided characters who you can kind of put them on the evil side, so to speak, but really they're just very misguided characters. And then in season 2, where they're more friendly with the Rangers, but they're still kind of verbally jarring with them, and they're trying to find out the Power Rangers' identities, which, it's a fine cause. It's definitely steeped in selfishness, but it's a more fun, active role for them. And then you get to season 3, where they become junior police officers, which, they're not great at, obviously, because you have to have the comedy, but you're finally seeing the full altruistic nature of them, that they have actually taken a good turn. And we get funny bits, like when the actual Rangers are just doing this when they find out that the Bulk and Skull become police officers. It's like, man, and then they congratulate them. It's like, wow, that was a fun moment, but there was a genuine moment there too. And for someone who's watched all 3 seasons, it's like, I feel like I went on a journey with them. Like, it took a long time to get there, but they have really turned the corner as characters. And that's just ultimately a really satisfying experience that I don't think we get anymore with, say, side characters just in general. Anybody who's like not a Ranger but who's not a bad guy. Stuff like that. And I wish we would get more of that. More, I don't want to just say world building, because that whole term gets a little overused nowadays. But, like actually giving characters to characters who aren't integral to the whole selling of the toys, I guess you would say. What else about season 3? Again, the Alien Rangers. I think it was an odd choice to, like, very soon after Catherine became part of the team, to have the whole, turn the. Also, by the way, that was also when we had like the jetting and the metallic armor, both very weird things that did not last. But then, like, right after that, we have the Rangers get turned into kids again, which has happened a little too often. Although I do give them credit, because they are smart enough to acknowledge the fact that if the Rangers are turning into kids, that based on the Ranger turnover, the only person that Baby Bulk and Skull would know would be Baby Billy. So, that was smart. I appreciate that. But yeah, so you turn the Rangers into kids, so you have a reason to necessitate using the Kaku Ranger footage of the Alien Rangers, which, even as a kid, I was a little iffy on, because I'm like, okay, they have battle Borgs that look exactly like the Shokin Zords. Isn't that convenient? Isn't that special? But, so that was a bit iffy. And, with the Alien Rangers, again, Delphine was really got the most focus. Sestro was basically just Billy. And Oracle was the Red Ranger. But, like, poor Titus and Corcus didn't really even exist, to be honest. Which is disappointing. But it was fun to actually see them use some footage, from Kaku Ranger. And I kind of liked the idea of using the younger actors. It was just a fun, different thing. And it was an arc. It wasn't like, Alien Rangers Part 1, Part 2, as much as it was just like, we're going to do a handful of episodes here that are the Ranger, I'm talking too long. But we're just going to do a handful of episodes here where we're just going to have fun, and use this new team. But in the background, we're still doing the Zeo quest, which I think was one of the more brilliant things in Power Rangers, because of the fact that they actually established the Zeo Crystal much earlier. And they broke it into pieces, and they sent them across, time and space. So it was actually established. So by the time they get back to them, it's like, oh, I remember that. That was an actual thing. It actually feels like they're building towards something, and that, they already have the different shapes. So we know O-Ranger is coming. Like, it was just a very beautifully executed thing that I just don't think they could do anymore nowadays. And as far as the quests go, they're a little, some are better than others. The whole Aisha, Tanya time thing, when we find Tanya's parents and Zeo, like, that's just a mind blow. And Tommy's Native American now. Okay, didn't see that coming. Didn't know that was a thing. Okay. But, overall, it was just a fun way to kind of just end MMPR, to do something very different. That wasn't just episodic. And when you bring them all back to the end, and there's also, like, even Rito and Goldar, they're joke characters now. By the end of that, like, throughout season 3, they quickly dropped Rito down to silliness, and Goldar had just been falling down as all 3 seasons went on. But to actually have them be sort of successful at the end, it was part of me was like, you know, go guys. I mean, yeah, you're destroying the superheroes, but you did a thing. You did a thing. Granted, your thing was kind of redacted as soon as the next season started, but still, you did a thing. That was fun. And it was kind of cool to see adult Billy, too, there. You know, I feel bad for the child Billy actor because he was barely used. But, you know, it was like Billy finally got some time to shine on his own. It took the entire team being turned into children for it to happen. But Billy got some time to shine, which is good. You know, for those who know David's story, if you don't, please go to No Pink Spandex. Go check us out on YouTube. The interviews with David there. If you don't know everything, I would recommend checking those out. There's a lot of information in there, a lot of really personal, interesting stuff. But it was nice to see David had that moment before Zeo happened and he was transitioned out of the Ranger role and then eventually out of the series. You know, it was good to have him get that moment. You know, in hindsight, it was very satisfying. And ultimately, I think that's what I loved the most about season 3 was it dared to be different. It had a lot of consistent threads that weren't necessarily always followed up on, but they eventually, you know, played an important part in the end to the point where it's like, okay, I can actually see that this season was very much planned out. They knew what they wanted to happen. They knew they were finally going to be done with the Jew Ranger suits, and they wanted to get just a clean transition to, you know, yearly changeovers of suits and stuff like that. And this was how they got to it. So it just felt very, very, very complete, you know? Same thing I said within Space, where it just feels like from episode 1, they knew what they wanted to happen in the last episode. And whether they did or they didn't, it felt like they did. So it made it more satisfying. And I think that's what you'll find about all of the seasons to come in the countdown, the final 4 seasons, that is one thing they all have, is that they know where they're going, or at least they can fake it, and that makes it feel like a full arc there. And that's a big thing that the seasons of most anything really need more nowadays. A lot of shows still don't have that, and that's unfortunate. But, you know, that's what Power Rangers does. You know, as much as we joke about Power Rangers, it's got some good stuff out there. Granted, most of it's in the far past, but they've got some good stuff out there. And that's what's ultimately important. Anyway, that is going to be it for me today. I am tired. I talked so long. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please leave a comment if you want to talk about these 2 seasons. You know, tell me what you think of them, what you think about what's going to be coming up, because you know what 4 are left if you've been doing the math. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't subscribed. I really appreciate it. I think I'm at like about 150 subscribers already, so that's pretty cool. I really appreciate that. Like this video if you like it. Again, always the biggest thing is share this video with friends if you think they might be interested in this sort of stuff, that they might want to give their own input. And that's going to be it for me. I will have, what do I have coming up? Another part of this countdown. Probably got some Loot Crate stuff coming up sooner than later. I know there's another Tiny Cube. The bat is coming very, very soon. But other than that, I think we are going to have a little hiatus from the unboxing stuff. Thank you all for checking out my video for the mecha for Jewel of the World. Very much appreciate that. So my Legacy Communicator review is pretty new. Thunder's Megazord, Falcon Zord, all those are out there. All that good stuff. And again, thank you for watching, and I will see you soon with number 4 on the countdown. Deuces! Deuces!